Hello everyone, my name is Leo and with this video we will compare the Kemper Player versus the Nano Cortex, also with some pretty scientific tests. First of all, we will hear the units in action in a demo song, then we will compare the technical characteristics of the two units with a very detailed comparison chart, then we will hear an head-to-head of the two units versus real tube amps, also performing the Null Test. Finally, I will give you my 2 cents. So, please subscribe and ring the bell as it would really help me to make more videos like this. And this video really took me a lot of time. Let's start! Let's now compare the technical specifications and features offered by the two units. First of all, we have access to tons of profiles for both the units. Here I think that it is worth noticing that, first of all, with the Nano Cortex you can create profiles, where this is not possible with the Kemper Player alone, but you need, for instance, a Kemper stage. Second, Kemper has a much easier method to share profiles, where with the Cortex the procedure is more closed and complicated. Third, in the Nano Cortex you have access only to profiles, where in the original Quad Cortex you can access also to modeling tech, I mean modeled amp and not only profiled ones. Finally, the Kemper offers also the liquid technology that basically allow to mimic the real amp even when you change the gain and the EQ settings, where the profile alone is typically a static picture of the amp with a specific set of settings. We will investigate the quality of the profiles in the more sound section of this video, also checking out how the new liquid profile technology of the Kemper performance. Both the units offer the possibility to load third-party IRs. In terms of patches and presets, the Kemper offers 10 banks of 5 rigs each, with a total amount of 50 presets, where the Nano Cortex offers 64 presets. Let's now talk about the effects and the effect chain management, where there are some pretty interesting differences. Kemper offers 5 effects blocks, 3 before the amp and the cab, including the noise gate, and 2 after. The effects before the amp can be only mono, the ones after can be stereo. You can populate each block with whatever effect you want, but we have a pretty big limitation here. We are limited to only 2 stereo blocks after the cab. With this limitation we cannot have, for instance, a stereo chorus, a stereo delay and a stereo reverb after the cab, but we can use only 2 of them at a time. This limitation drives me crazy, as I very often use a stereo chorus, delay and reverb in my signal chain, and honestly, I don't think I'm the only one. Totally, we have more than 115 effects with 2 noise gates, 21 wah, 12 distortions, 2 boosters, 60 Q, 2 compressors, 25 modulations, 1 octaver, 24 delays, 22 reverbs. Now, Kemper has just released a pretty important firmware upgrade that is not free, but that we need to pay. Basically, we have 2 paid upgrade levels. One which is priced at 171 that adds all the Kemper effects, the morphing feature, output EQ, Riggs fade time and bit scanner. Another one priced at 300 that includes all of the above plus 8 effects blocks instead of the 4, parallel effect path and the looper and rig spillover. Therefore, basically, we can overcome the aforementioned limitation of the only 2 stereo effects after the cab, paying 300 euros, with the total price, considering the price of the player, at around 1000 bucks. Well, in this case, I think the player is not gonna be very much comparable to the Nano Cortex, as its total price would be almost twice the price of the Nano, so keep it in mind for our final considerations. On the other hand, the Nano Cortex offers 5 fixed blocks, like the Kemper, but 2 preamp and 3 after. So basically the opposed approach of the Kemper, which has 3 pre and 2 post. The effect chain is fixed, I mean we can just have a noise gate, a pitch shifter before the amp, and then a chorus, delay and reverb after the amp. We cannot change the order of these blocks, and we are limited to 5 effects in total. I mean, we have just 1 reverb and not a choice, for instance, between a spring reverb or a plate reverb, etc. So here we have some pretty big differences in the approach of the 2 units. Kemper offers much more effect types, the signal chain has 3 pre and 2 post, and we can change the order of the 3 pre-effects or the 2 post. But we cannot put a pre-effects in the post chain and vice versa. And as I said, you can overcome this limitation only dropping 300 bucks. Nano Cortex is really not customizable, I would say. No order change and fixed effect types. On the other hand, I much prefer to have 3 post stereo effects rather than 2, as the Nano Cortex allows me to have a chorus, delay and reverb in stereo after the cab, where the Kemper is limited to only 2 stereo effects after the cab. What drives me crazy in the Nano Cortex is that the pre-effects are only a noise gate and a pitch shifter, and actually I never use neither of the 2. I would have much preferred, much appreciated a compressor and an overdrive before the amp. Maybe Neural DSP is thinking that we can do a profile mimicking an overdrive and the amp together, but well, it would have been a much more flexible approach to let me use an overdrive before the amp block, instead of the noise gate or a pitch shifter that I never use. Finally, neither of the units offers an external effect loop. The Kemper offers only MIDI via USB, but does not have a physical MIDI connection, which is available in the Nano Cortex. I mean, the Nano offers a MIDI in via TRS jack and also MIDI via USB. In terms of I/O, the Kemper has a stereo balanced out, a mono balanced out and an headphone out. The Nano has a stereo balanced out via TRS and an headphone out. The Kemper has 3 foot switches instead of the 2 of the Nano. Both the unit offers an input for an external controller. The Nano uses the same socket both for MIDI in and for the external controller. Neither of the 2 units offers a screen, where I think at least a small screen with the number of the preset used would have been much appreciated, especially considering that these units are not so cheap. In terms of ADA conversion and USB connectivity, the Kemper offers a 4x4 USB-B audio interface at 44.1 kHz and 24 bits. The Nano has a 48 kHz and 24 bits 4x3 channels USB-C audio interface. So here I prefer the Nano as it has a USB connection that is more user-friendly than the Kemper as it is reversible. Furthermore, via USB-C you can also power up the unit, which is very handy. Finally, the Nano offers 48 kHz where the Kemper is limited to 44.1. As regards latency, they are very similar at 3.2-3.3 milliseconds for the Kemper and 3 for the Nano. That jumps up to 3.6 when we use the pitch shifter. I have done dedicated latency test videos for both the units that you can check out in the channel. In terms of special features, I would mention that the Kemper can be controlled with a mobile app via Wi-Fi or with a PC via a computer app. Furthermore, I would mention the liquid profile tech introduced by Kemper that should allow to maintain the profile faithful to the real amp even when changing the parameters used at the time of the profiling process. We will see how it performs in the more sound section of this video. On the other hand, the Nano Cortex do not offer a computer app for creating our own profiles, but we can do it only via the phone app, which is nice, even if I always prefer to have desktop programs to control and customize my presets. The Kemper is more power hungry and heavier than the Cortex, as you can see from the table in the screen. And finally, the price. The Kemper is 700 and the Nano Cortex is 580. Of course, the total price of the Kemper could become 1000 if you add the paid upgrades. So summarizing, I would say that the main differences are: with the Nano you can profile your own amp, where with the Kemper you need, for instance, a Kemper stage. The Kemper offers much more effects, even if the limitation of the only 2 stereo blocks after the cab drives me crazy. And as I said, you can overcome this limitation only dropping $300. On the other hand, with the Nano you cannot load a drive effect or a compressor before the amp, which is a pretty big and incomprehensible limitation, even if it offers 3 stereo effects after the cab. That is what I need. The Nano has physical MIDI ports, where the Kemper can only be controlled with MIDI over USB. The Nano offers a 48 kHz audio interface, where the Kemper is limited to 44.1. I would also mention the 3 foot switches of the Kemper versus the 2 of the Nano. And finally, the price of the Nano is better than the one of the Kemper that is more expensive. Please let me know if there are other differences that are important for you, or if there are mistakes, so that together we can help other guitarists to make the right choice according to their needs. Let's now jump to the more sound section with some incredible scientific tests that I can't wait to share. Welcome to the more sound section of this video. Here we will share 3 tests. First of all, we will just check out a simple comparison focused on a clean tone, where it is gonna be pretty difficult to tell the difference between the units, in my opinion. Then, with the second test, I would like you to appreciate how much 2 profiles taken with 2 different refining Kemper procedures may differ each from the other. Finally, with the third test, we will share the results of my Null Test to verify with some scientific numbers which unit offers better profiles, also checking out the performances of the Kemper liquid profiling tech. Let me also add that I have profiled a Mesa Boogie Lone Star, a Marshall Plexi and a Soldano SLO100, coupled with a Greenback speaker, an SM57 and an API 512 as preamplifier. For the Kemper I have followed the procedure related to the liquid profiling, therefore selecting the same gain and EQ of the amp while profiling the amp, and for instance choosing the Soldano SLO100 tone stack for the Soldano. By the way, for our Kemper fan, yes, I have properly set up the pure cab option. Okay, first test now. Well, what do you think? They sound very similarly, right? And now let's run the second test, with which we will check out the frequency response and the dynamic range management of the units using 4 pre-recorded DI tracks. Here the purpose is just to let you appreciate how much 2 different Kemper profiles may differ according to the refining procedure you do, and of course how well the units manage the dynamic range excursion. Let's hear the test. And now let's move to the numeric part of this video. Of course, we are gonna rely on the Null Test, which is based on the concept that if you play a sound and its phase inverted counterpart, you obtain silence. Therefore, if we need to compare two sounds, we can play them at the same time with one of them phase inverted, and the lower is the resulting integrated LUFS, the more the sounds are equal each to the other. I would not enter into further details, and if you want more info you can check out my other video comparisons where I have explained the Null Test more deeply. Of course, the tracks are all matched in terms of LUFS and aligned at the sample point level. This is very important. Now let's hear the real Soldano and the Kemper together with the Kemper phase inverted. As I said, the lower is the volume, the higher the fidelity of the profile. I measure the resulting volume in integrated LUFS, which value is minus 30.9. Let's do the same with the real Soldano and the Nano Cortex phase inverted. The resulting LUFS is minus 33.3. Therefore, we can say that the Nano Cortex has a higher fidelity compared to the Kemper. Actually, with some math, we can say that the Nano Cortex is around 8% better than the Kemper. Cool, isn't it? As I say, to make this type of comparison, I have aligned perfectly the tracks at the sample point level, and I have set all the tracks at the same LUFS. I mean, the tracks are matched in terms of volume. Guys, this test required a lot of time, so please do me a favor, like, subscribe and share. It's free and it means a lot to me. And now let's go ahead with another super interesting test. One of the cons of the profiling procedures is that each profile is a detailed picture of an amp with a specific set of settings, I mean with a specific value for the gain, the EQ, etc. But if you change the original settings of the profile, the sound starts to differ from the behavior of the real amp. Kemper, with its liquid profiling tech, claims to have solved this problem. Basically, while profiling, you tell to the algorithm the original settings of the amp, and you also define a reference predefined amp. This should allow the resulting profile to behave like the real amp, even if we change the setting of the profile. Now, I have performed the same aforementioned test, but dividing by 2 the gain of the amp and the treble, to check out which unit was better matching the changing tone of the amp. And now I am putting each couple, real amp and profile, in line with the other so that we can visually compare the resulting LUFS and the percentage differences, with also the graphical EQ representation of the differences between each profile and the real amp. Well, these are the results I have obtained. Kemper with half the volume and treble versus real amp, 33.5 LUFS. Nano Cortex minus 28.3. So, Kemper basically improves its performances where Nano Cortex is getting worse. Overall, the Kemper here becomes around 18% better than the Nano. And this is a pretty big difference. Very interesting results, I think. Nano Cortex better in pure amp profiles, but Kemper better when we change the profile settings. Please write your opinions in the comment section below. And now let's jump to the conclusions of this video with my 2 cents section. Final considerations here, and please notice that these are gonna be my personal opinions, even if corroborated with some scientific tests for my specific use cases. You may not agree with me, and this is totally fine. Furthermore, this is a totally independent review. I have bought these units with my own money and I am not paid by Kemper or Neural DSP. And guys, I have spent a lot of time and effort in this video, so please subscribe and ring the bell. to help me to make more videos like this. With this out of the way, I would say that in terms of sound, the Nano Cortex is better with a pure profile capture, but when you change the settings of the captured profile, the Kemper liquid profile technology prevails over the Nano Cortex, which degrades the quality of its profile much more than the Kemper. So, if your goal is to take just a profile and leave it as it is, Nano Cortex is better. On the other hand, if you plan to change the profile settings quite intensively and drastically, the Kemper overall performs better. But please keep in mind that you need your amp listed in the available Kemper tone stacks to get the best results, and so far tone stacks are not so many. Furthermore, the profiling procedure of the Nano Cortex, in my opinion, is more user-friendly and allows me to have more consistent results. In fact, the unit plays by itself the riffs needed to refine the profiles, where with the Kemper you have to play your own riffs, and in my experience this ends up with different results, even profiling the exact same amp. In terms of features, I would say that the biggest pro of the Kemper versus the Nano Cortex is the much bigger amount of effects that are also very enjoyable. I mean, I like them. But we have the limitation of the only 2 stereo effect blocks after the cab that drives me crazy. I mean, in my signal chain, typically I have a stereo chorus, delay and reverb after the cab. And this signal chain is not available in the basic Kemper Player. Of course, we can overcome this limitation, dropping $300 for the level 2 upgrade. But in this case, the total price of our solution is gonna be $1,000, almost double the price of the Nano. So I think that the two devices here become almost not comparable with such a big price difference. And this is also the reason why I would not mention all the other features added with the paid upgrade, as the looper, the parallel effect, etc. In fact, with these features enabled, the two devices are gonna be in a totally different price range, in my opinion. On the other hand, the Nano Cortex allows me to create the signal chain of post effects I want, but here the limitation is the missing possibility to have drive effects before the amp, which is of course a bummer and a pretty incomprehensible limitation in my opinion. Neural DSP, please tell me why have you put a noise gate and a pitch shifter before the amp? Why don't you allow us to have a compressor or a distortion pedal before the amp? This choice is totally incomprehensible for me. Then I would mention the 48 kHz audio interface of the Nano Cortex, where the Kemper is limited to 44.1, and I always record at 48. I would also mention the physical MIDI in available in the Nano via TRS that is not available in the Kemper, that offers only MIDI over USB. The Kemper has some more advanced routing options compared to the Nano, thanks to the separated stereo out and mono out sockets, but I don't need these features for my use case. So finally, if I had to choose between these two units, well, I would finally go with the Nano Cortex for the aforementioned reasons. I mean, 3 stereo effect after the cab without having to drop $1,000, 48 kHz audio interface and physical MIDI in. In this way I would also save some money, which is nice, and with the saved money I can purchase a tube screamer and a MIDI controller and still be at a lower price point that the Kemper Player upgraded. Even if I prefer the Nano Cortex, I'm still pretty disappointed by this unit. I mean, the missing overdrive and compressor blocks before the amp are totally unacceptable. I don't know why they have done this choice. Really, it is a bummer. And now it's your turn. Please let me know your precious and valuable opinion in the comment section below, so that together we can help other guitarists to make the right choice according to their needs. That's all for the today video. I hope you have enjoyed, and if you did it, please subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell, as it would really help me to make more video like this. If you're interested in my IRs or ToneX or Kemper profiles, please follow the link in the card above or description below, where there is also a link to my brand new EP, Art, Love, Freedom. See you soon, bye bye, and now I need to take a break.